When my sister came out of that hospital room alive, holding my hand and calling me her savior, I had no idea she was already reaching for my life. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, the kind that sits too long on a warming plate. My shoes stuck slightly to the floor as I paced back and forth, counting steps I didn't remember taking. 23 steps from the vending machine to the double doors. 23 back. I kept my arms folded tight, not because I was cold, but because my chest felt like it might split open if I didn't hold myself together. The surgeon finally came out with his cap pulled low, his face calm in that practiced way doctors learn when they carry both hope and bad news in the same pocket. He smiled gently. "She made it," he said. My knees buckled before I could thank him. I remember sitting down hard on one of those plastic chairs, the kind that never quite feel clean, and pressing my fingers into my eyes. I didn't cry loudly. I just breathed, deep, shaky, like someone who had been underwater too long and finally broke the surface. Renee. Left. That was all that mattered. Then. My sister was always the fragile one. Not weak, just breakable. Like fine china our mother only brought out on holidays. I was the sturdy one, the plate you could drop and trust not to shatter. That's how life shaped us, long before we were old enough to notice. I'm Lillian. I'm the older sister by 7 years. Old enough to remember our father leaving. Old enough to understand why our mother cried at the kitchen sink when she thought we were asleep. Old enough to learn early that stability is something you build yourself, brick by careful brick. Renee, on the other hand, grew up in the cracks. She learned charm before discipline, learned how to smile her way out of trouble before learning how to stand on her own 2 feet. Teachers loved her. Boys adored her. Trouble followed her like a shadow she pretended not to see, and I loved her anyway. By the time she got sick, I was married, settled, and living a life that finally felt earned. My husband Marcus and I had been together 15 years, married for 12. Not the kind of marriage people post about online, but the kind that survives on shared routines and quiet understanding. Our house sat on a tree-lined street where neighbors waved but didn't pry. The yellow front door was Marcus's idea. "It feels welcoming," he'd said, stepping back to admire his work. I teased him for weeks, but I let it stay. That door had seen birthday balloons, grocery bags, arguments, apologies, and years of coming home to someone who knew the sound of my footsteps. Marcus worked long hours in logistics management. I worked in medical billing study, unglamorous, reliable. We didn't have children. Life hadn't unfolded that way for us, and after a while, we stopped forcing the conversation. We learned how to be a family of 2, until Renee needed us. Her illness came fast. A condition she'd ignored too long because she didn't have insurance and didn't like doctors telling her hard truths. By the time she collapsed at work, the surgery was no longer optional. It was urgent, expensive, terrifying. She called me from the hospital, her voice thin and scared. "Lily," she whispered, like we were still little girls hiding under blankets. "I don't know what to do." I drove there immediately. Marcus met me after work. He held my hand while the doctor explained the risks and the cost. When the question of payment came up, the room went quiet. I didn't look at Marcus before I answered. "I'll take care of it." It wiped out most of our savings. The emergency fund. The vacation we'd planned but never took. Marcus hesitated, just a flicker, but then he nodded. "She's your sister," he said softly. "We'll figure it out." Renee cried when I told her, grabbed my hands like I was something holy. "I'll never forget this," she said. "I owe you everything." I believed her. After the surgery, Renee had nowhere to recover properly. Her apartment was up a narrow flight of stairs, and she could barely walk. Bringing her into our home felt obvious, temporary, the right thing to do. The guest room was small but bright. I changed the sheets, fluffed the pillows, placed a little vase of flowers on the dresser. Renee watched me with tired eyes and a soft smile. "I don't deserve you," she said. I brushed it off. "Just heal." What I didn't see then, what I didn't want to see, were the small shifts. The way Marcus lingered a second longer in the doorway when he brought her tea. The way Renee laughed just a little too brightly at his jokes. The way our quiet home slowly filled with something unfamiliar. At first, I told myself it was gratitude. Love has a way of blinding you when it wears the face of family. And I was still too busy being grateful that my sister was alive to notice what was quietly dying in my own house. Renee's recovery settled into her house the way humidity settles into summer walls, slowly, quietly, until one day you realize the air feels different. At first, everything felt manageable. I adjusted my schedule to work from home a few days a week. I made soups that simmered low and slow, the kind our mother used to swear could heal anything. Chicken broth, garlic, thyme. The kitchen smelled warm again, alive. Renee slept a lot in those early days, her body still fighting to remember how to be whole. Marcus was helpful, attentive, more than I expected, maybe, but I told myself that was just his nature. He'd always been considerate. He'd carried Renee's laundry downstairs without being asked, refilled her water glass, adjusted her pillows, with the same gentle care he used on me when I had migraines. I noticed it, but I didn't name it. When you've been married a long time, you stop questioning kindness. You trust it. Evenings followed a new rhythm. Renee would sit at the kitchen table, wrapped in one of my cardigans, while Marcus cooked or ordered takeout when I was too tired. We talked about small things, old memories, television shows, plans Renee said she'd make once I'm back on my feet. She laughed more than she used to. A lighter sound like relief mixed with something else. Sometimes I caught her watching Marcus when she thought no one noticed. Her gaze lingered, curious, soft. I felt a twinge then, like the prick of a thorn, but I swallowed it. She's been through a trauma, I told myself. She's just grateful. Gratitude can look intense when someone's life has been saved. Still, there were moments. Little ones. One night, I came downstairs later than usual. I'd fallen asleep reading, the book still open on my chest. When I reached the bottom step, I heard voices in the kitchen, low, intimate, not whispering, but close enough to feel private. Renee was telling Marcus about her divorce details I'd heard before, but never like this. Her voice trembled, breaking in the right places. "I think I failed," she said. "I don't think I was ever enough for anyone." Marcus leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "That's not true," he said. "You've just had bad luck." I paused, one hand still on the banister. Something in his tone stopped me. It wasn't wrong, just personal. When I stepped fully into the kitchen, they both looked up too quickly. "Oh," Renee said, straightening. "I didn't hear you." I smiled, kept it light. Couldn't sleep. Marcus kissed my cheek, normal, familiar. Still, the air felt disturbed, like I'd walked in on something unfinished. After that, I started noticing patterns I hadn't before. Marcus's phone, always face down. Renee's door closed more often, their conversations stopping when I entered a room. Once, I found Renee wearing my perfume, a soft floral I'd used for years. She laughed it off. "I ran out of mine," she said. "Hope you don't mind." I didn't. Or rather, I told myself I didn't. Suspicion feels ugly when you love the people you're questioning. It makes you feel disloyal, paranoid, small. I didn't want to be that woman, the jealous sister, the mistrustful wife. So I pushed it down. Weeks passed. Renee grew stronger. She started helping around the house again, insisting she didn't want to be a burden. She and Marcus developed an easy rhythm inside jokes, shared glances when I teased them both. I told myself I was imagining it. Then came the afternoon I came home early. It was raining lightly, the kind that darkens the sidewalk but doesn't make noise. I'd finished a meeting sooner than expected and decided to surprise them with coffee from Marcus's favorite cafe. I walked in quietly, setting my keys down without thinking. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something warm tea. Maybe I heard laughter upstairs. Marcus's laugh. Renee's laugh dotted floated down the hallway. Light and intimate, like something meant to be private. I stood there longer than I should have. When they came downstairs, they were a little too close. Renee's hair was still damp, like she'd just showered. Marcus looked startled, then quickly composed himself. "Hey," he said. "Didn't know you were home." "I finished early," I replied. "Thought I'd bring coffee." Renee smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't have to." I watched them both as I handed the cups over. Their fingers brushed, just briefly, but they both noticed it. I could tell by the way they pulled back, by the sudden shift in energy. That night, I lay awake listening to the house settle. Marcus slept beside me, breathing evenly. I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying moments like scenes from a film I didn't want to finish watching. The next morning, I asked Renee how long she planned to stay. She looked hurt. I thought, until I'm fully better. "You are better," I said gently. "The doctor said you're healing well." She nodded, eyes dropping. "I guess I just got used to being here." So had I, and that scared me. A few days later, I found the receipt dot. It was folded into Marcus's jacket pocket when I went to hang it up. A hotel receipt. One night, local. Dated 2 weeks earlier, one of the nights I'd worked late. My hands shook as I held it. I didn't confront him then. Or her. Not yet, because once you see the edge of betrayal, stepping forward will change everything. And I wasn't ready to lose what I still hoped I was wrong about. But deep down, something old and steady. Inside me, the part of me that had survived my childhood, built my life brick by brick, was already bracing itself. The truth was coming. I could feel it. Asterisk, I folded the hotel receipt and slid it back into Marcus's jacket like it might burn a hole through my hands. For the rest of that day, I moved through the house like a guest in my own life. I washed dishes that were already clean, wiped counters that didn't need wiping. I watched Renee from the corner of my eye as she moved more freely now, her steps confident, her laughter easy. She was healed enough to leave, but she didn't seem in a hurry. Marcus acted normal. Too normal. He asked about my meetings, complained about traffic, kissed my forehead before bed. Each gesture felt practiced, like lines delivered by someone who knew his part well. At night, I lay awake and listened to his breathing, wondering if guilt made a sound, wondering if betrayal had a rhythm I could learn. I didn't sleep much after that. Instead, I watched not in a frantic way, not like a woman looking for proof she could wave in the air. I watched quietly, carefully, the way you do when you're afraid the truth might confirm your worst fear. I noticed how Renee's laughter softened around Marcus, how her shoulders relaxed when he entered a room. I noticed how Marcus started timing his showers for when I was on conference calls, how he volunteered to run errands with Renee instead of alone. Once I asked casually, "Where did you two go?" Marcus answered too quickly, "Grocery store." Renee added, just a beat later, "Pharmacy." They didn't look at each other. That night, I went through our bank statements. I told myself I was only checking balances after the surgery. Money was tighter. But there it was, a charge I didn't recognize. Another hotel. Different date. Same location. My chest tightened, slow and heavy. I remembered something Renee had said weeks earlier, when she was still weak, her voice thin against the pillows. "You're lucky," she'd told me, watching Marcus move around the room. "You found someone solid." At the time, I'd smiled. Now the memory tasted bitter. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion. It was the waiting. Living inside a question mark. Every interaction layered with doubt. Every kindness suspect. I didn't want to accuse them without certainty. Accusations have a way of turning you into the villain when you're wrong. or making you look desperate. When you're right, Dot, so I waited. The moment came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was supposed to be at work. Marcus believed I was. Renee believed it too. But a migraine had sent me home early, my head throbbing, light pressing painfully against my eyes. I parked down the street, not wanting to deal with conversation yet. The house looked the same from the outside. Yellow door, curtains drawn. When I unlocked the door, the first thing I heard wasn't voices, Dot. It was silence, the kind that feels deliberate. I stepped inside slowly. The air felt heavy, like it had been disturbed recently. I heard movement upstairs, a drawer closing. Soft footsteps, then laughter, Renee's laughter. Marcus's voice followed, low, intimate, not meant to travel. I climbed the stairs one at a time. My heart didn't race. It sank, like it already knew. Their bedroom door was opened out my bedroom. The bed was unmade. Renee sat on the edge of it, barefoot, one of my robes pulled around her shoulders. Marcus stood in front of her, his hand resting on her knee like it belonged there. They froze when they saw me. Time did something strange in that moment. Stretched, thickened, every detail sharpened, the hum of the ceiling fan, the way the carpet pressed into my bare feet, the look on my sister's face as guilt and fear battled for control. Marcus was the first to speak. Lillian. I raised my hand. Don't. My voice surprised me, calm, flat, like I was stating a fact, not standing in the wreckage of my life. Renee stood up slowly. It's not what you think? I laughed then. A small sound, dry. It's exactly what I think. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, pacing like an animal trapped in a too small cage. We didn't mean for it to happen. I looked at my sister. How long? She swallowed. It just started. We connected. While I was paying for your surgery, I asked at her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. No, I said quietly. I understand perfectly. I walked to the dresser, opened the drawer, and pulled out the receipt I'd memorized. I held it up. 2 hotels, I said. That I know of. Marcus's shoulders slumped. Renee covered her mouth, sobbing. I didn't plan this. I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at her, my baby sister, the girl I'd held when she was scared, the woman I'd saved. You already dead? I said, Dot. There was no screaming. No throwing things. Just a deep, aching silence where trust used to live. I want you both out of my house, I said. Renee looked at Marcus, then back at me. Lily, please, out, I repeated. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll pack a bag. Take everything you need, I said. You won't be coming back? They left within an hour. Renee didn't look at me when she walked past. Marcus paused at the door, like he wanted to say something meaningful. I didn't give him the chance. When the door closed, the house felt hollow. Too quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally cried, not loud, not dramatic. Just tears slipping down my face, soaking into the fabric of the robe Renee had worn, the robe I had offered her when she was weak. I stayed there a long time, holding myself together the only way I knew how, that grief has layers. And beneath the heartbreak, something else was forming. Resolved. The first night alone in that house was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep in the bedroom. I couldn't. The sheets still smelled faintly of laundry detergent and something else, something sweeter, unfamiliar. I slept on the couch with a lamp on, the television murmuring to itself like a stranger trying to keep me company. Every sound made me sit up. The refrigerator clicking on, the house settling. I kept expecting the front door to open, Marcus's familiar footsteps to cross the floor, some apology to arrive fully formed and convincing. Nothing came. Morning arrived without ceremony. Pale light slipped through the curtains, dust floating in it like tiny questions with no answers. I made coffee and forgot to drink it. I stared at the yellow front door longer than necessary and wondered how something meant to feel. Hopeful could now feel like a lie. I took the day off work. I called my supervisor and said I wasn't well, which was the truest thing I'd said in Weekstop by afternoon. The shock had worn off enough for anger to rise not loud or explosive, but steady, focused, the kind that doesn't burn out quickly. I began to think practically. Survival has a way of sharpening your mind. I changed the locks. The locksmith didn't ask questions. He just did his job while I watched from the doorway, arms folded, heart pounding every time metal scraped against metal. When he handed me the new keys, I felt something close to relief. Then I sat at the dining table and opened my laptop. Marcus and I had always shared finances. Trust, we'd called it. Now I called it exposure. I pulled up bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies. I printed statements, took screenshots. I noticed transfers I hadn't paid attention to before, small amounts spread out. Easy to miss. Hotel rooms, gifts, meals for two. I felt foolish for how long it took me to see it. That evening, my phone rang. Renee. I let it go to voicemail. Then Marcus. I silenced the phone when I finally listened to the messages. Renee's voice was thick with tears. Lily, please call me. I never meant for it to happen like this. I love you. You know that. Marcus's message was quieter, measured. We need to talk. We owe each other that. I deleted both. Talking wouldn't undo what had been done. And I was done carrying other people's guilt on my back. The next day, I met with a lawyer. She was a woman around my age, calm eyes, neat handwriting. She listened without interrupting as I laid out my marriage, like a timeline of choices that suddenly looked very different in hindsight. Infidelity changes things. She said gently, but you need to decide what you want. What I wanted felt obvious. I want my life back. I said. Filing for separation felt surreal. Signing my name over and over, each signature a small acknowledgement that something permanent had ended. But there was clarity in it too. A sense of forward motion I hadn't felt since the hospital waiting room. That night, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. Renee had told her. Mama, I said softly before she could speak. I know. There was a pause on the line. She says it was a mistake. I closed my eyes. So was trusting them. My mother sighed. She's your sister? I know, I said. That's what hurts. Word spread quietly at first. Family has a way of carrying news like a shared burden. My aunt called. A cousin sent a careful text. No one knew what to say, and I didn't blame them. What surprised me was how quickly sympathy gave way to clarity. They were wrong, my aunt said firmly. Both of them. That mattered more than I expected. Renee tried to see me once. She showed up unannounced, standing on the porch like a child who'd wandered too far from home. I didn't open the door. I'm sorry. She called through the glass. I didn't mean to fall in love with him. That was when something in me finally hardened. You didn't fall, I said through the door. You stepped. She cried. IDN, single quotes teed up. Marcus moved in with her temporarily. I learned that through a mutual friend who didn't know I hadn't asked. The information landed heavily but didn't break me. By then, I was past the point of shock. What followed was quieter but harder. I had to grieve two relationships at once. The man I'd built a life with, the sister I thought I knew. Some nights, the grief came in waves. Other nights, it was numbness. I learned to sit with both without rushing myself out of them. I returned to work. I told people what they needed to know and nothing more. Routine became a lifeline. Emails, meetings, lunches eaten at my desk. Familiar tasks anchoring me to the present. Then came the invitations. A family gathering. A birthday. Holidays approaching like obstacles. I declined them all. I wasn't ready to be graceful, and I refused to perform healing for anyone else's comfort. The real turning point came when the separation became public. Marcus's colleagues knew. Friends knew. Renee's friends knew too, and not all of them stayed. Some things don't survive daylight. By the time autumn settled in, the truth had grown legs. It always does. What begins as a private wound eventually makes its way into the open, carried by conversations whispered over coffee, by careful questions that aren't really questions at all. People didn't ask me what happened. They asked how I was holding up. That told me everything. I never corrected anyone. I didn't have to. Marcus and Renee had stopped hiding. They showed up together at a neighborhood gathering I didn't attend. Their closeness unmistakable. Someone took a picture. Someone else shared it. And just like that, the story was no longer. Fragile. My phone buzzed that night with messages I hadn't asked for. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. I always thought something was off with her. I read them quietly, setting the phone down between replies. Validation is strange when it comes after loss. It doesn't heal you, but it does steady your feet. The real consequence came at Thanksgiving. Our family had always gathered at my mother's house, same table, same dishes, same arguments softened by tradition. This year, she called me a week beforehand. I can't have you both here, she said carefully. I appreciated her honesty. I understand. She wants to bring him, my mother added. She says it's serious. I closed my eyes. Serious. As if seriousness could cleanse what they'd done. I won't come. I said, I know. My mother whispered. The house felt especially quiet that day. I cooked for one. A small meal. I lit a candle and ate slowly, letting myself feel the weight of what was missing without trying to fill it. Later, my phone rang. It was my cousin. They're fighting, she said. A lot. I didn't ask why, but over the next few weeks, fragments reached me anyway. Marcus struggling with money now that he'd moved out. Renee realizing what it meant to be with someone who carried the aftermath of a broken marriage. Trust issues, tension, resentment. Affairs are built on fantasy. Real life has a way of tearing that down. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope. Marcus's handwriting careful and restrained. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. He wrote about regret, about confusion, about how he hadn't meant for things to spiral. He asked for forgiveness, not reconciliation, just forgiveness. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness isn't a transaction. It comes when it comes. Renee didn't write. She sent messages instead. Long ones. Apologies layered with justification. Love mixed with loneliness. I didn't respond. The legal proceedings moved forward quietly. Assets divided. Accounts separated. The house stayed mine. Marcus hadn't fought me on that. Perhaps guilt has its uses. One afternoon, as I was organizing paperwork, I came across the hospital bill. Paid in full. My name printed neatly at the top. I sat there a long time, staring at it. I didn't regret paying for her surgery. That choice had come from love, and I refused to let her actions poison that part of me. But I learned something important in that moment. Love does not obligate you to accept betrayal. By winter, people stopped asking questions. Life moved forward in the way it always does, indifferent to personal devastation. I redecorated the guest room, painted it a soft gray, donated the old bedding, cleared the space. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. One evening, I ran into Marcus unexpectedly at the grocery store. We stood awkwardly near the produce, both of us holding shopping baskets like shields. He looked tired, older. I hope you're doing okay, he said. I am, I replied. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. We parted without drama. without bitterness that mattered. A month later, my mother called again. She's moving out. She said, I didn't ask where. She says she lost you, my mother continued. And she finally understands what that means. I listened in silence. Some lessons arrived late. I began to feel lighter as spring approached. Not healed, not completely, but steadier. I started walking in the mornings again, feeling the air fill my lungs, noticing things I'd missed, the way sunlight caught on leaves, the sound of birds arguing in the trees. I realized then that my life wasn't over. It had simply changed direction. And for the first time since the hospital hallway, I allowed myself to believe that something new, something honest, could still be built from what remained.